Sorry, Lee. Close the blast doors.
I hope I wasn't a surprise, because I'm not anymore.
No, I think they knew you were coming.
Good to see lots of familiar faces there.
So there we go, guys. Lee Towersey is streaming in. For what we will do is we'll do a brief introduction for each of us, and then we'll start going into whatever this is. We don't really know what this is either, so go with it. At any point, don't wait. If you want to ask questions, just stick your hand up, and if you want to ask a question, we'll come to you. But anyway, do you want to introduce yourselves, guys? Who's on the screen? Can you tell us who's on the screen, please?
Hey everybody, yeah, it's Lee Towersey here, if you don't know already. I'm here in the UK. Sorry I can't be there. I was planning to be there, but sadly filming has put a stop to that. I'm currently working at Primal Studios and have been for the last 13 years on building and puppeteering droids.
I don't know if you know this guy on the end here, but can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Michael. Yeah, Mike Baddeley. I've been 3D printing for about 10 years and hanging out with lunatics for about the same sort of time.
And my name is Michael McMaster. Joined the club in December of 2001. There were only about 500 of us. And yeah, I've been building droids for Lucasfilm, Disney, TV shows, the theme parks, and some other fun things.
And I'm Doug Inman. I'm from the UK. I live in Scotland, and some of you will know me from Michael's channels. I've been a droid builder for 5 years, and I'm just me. I'm not really anything special, except for I'm just a droid builder who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So, but we will talk more about that. And this is the 3.5 Amigos, guys. So. So I'm guessing some of you won't know. We talked briefly about what we do now and how we got here briefly, but I think we should start, Lee, if you wouldn't mind, how you started getting into droid building and your hobby and how it's ended up being where, because some of you guys won't know obviously Lee's history, but Lee, if you wouldn't mind sharing your history of how you got to where you are now and any regrets along the way.
It's good to see you're actually there, because I just saw an audience for a few minutes there. I didn't know it could be some ruse that, I'm just sitting there talking to a load of people. Yeah, so it's good to see you guys. Hello, everybody. So I was building in 2007. That's when I started, just towards the end of the Yahoo groups. And then I took 2 years to build my R2D2. Thanks to the droid building community in the US mainly, because there wasn't much going on here in the UK at the time. And the first kit I built was an ANA frame and skins, which was Andy Swart and Alex Kung. Is that right? I think the names are correct, which is why it's the ANA. And
Andy's here.
In 2009, that's when I finished. And from there on in, really, because all of the sequels and I were the only R2D2 owners in the UK, it's very quickly started to get a lot of work, thankfully, from Mary Franklin at Lucasfilm. And we used to do game launches and so on here in the UK. And eventually, this is a very bridge version, because I'm sure most of you have heard it before, Oliver went up to Kathleen Kennedy at Celebration in Germany in 2012, was it? 2013? And just cheekily after, if she'd like the droids making for the new Star Wars films, because that was around the time that Disney had taken over Lucasfilm. And within, I think it was 3 months, Oliver got a phone call. And next thing he knew, there was a group of producers around his house, checking him out, making sure he was for real, and looking at his droids. And thankfully, he consulted me along with a few other builders here in the UK. Any of us would like to join him. It turned out to be me. Oliver and I went to Primal Studios for a couple of interviews, with Neil Scanlon, my boss at the time, and he's still my boss now. He was head of the creatures department on the Force Awakens. And it turned out to be what I didn't know. I assumed they were going to borrow our R2D2s or at least get some advice from us on how they could build them. But we finished the last meeting with being offered a job. So we actually left there, being told to keep it very secret. So we only told our partners. I didn't even tell my own kids. And weeks passed by. I think it's about 6 weeks until we heard anything again. And we were given our start date after 6 weeks, by which time I thought this was just a big joke and actually wasn't ever going to happen. Oliver and I turned up at Pinewood. There were our workbenches. And the rest is history, so to speak. And eventually I did tell my children, because JJ released, I think it was the first publicity photo for The Force Awakens, which was High from the Workshop, which is a picture he took. I don't know if you remember it, but it was a picture he took on his own iPhone with myself, Oliver Steeples, Kathleen Kennedy, and JJ with my R2D2 in the workshop. And that was the first time my kids even found out that I was actually working on Star Wars. So, so that's my story really, and I've been there ever since. The film industry wasn't for Oliver. He left after The Force Awakens, and he carried on building just for a hobby, and he guests in at Pinewood now and again. But I've carried on, and I've been there about 12, 13 years now, exclusively working for Neil. I haven't worked anywhere else really in the film industry. I decided to just focus on Star Wars. And I've been building droids ever since, probably in the hundreds now of droids that I've been involved in. Not singly building, so certainly been involved in building droids, and thankfully puppeteering them on set as well.
And that's Lee Towersey's story, guys. So, Michael Baddeley, how did you get to being the 3D printing god that you are now?
Very quickly, I inherited a 3D printer from work. I printed loads of little tiny things off, and then I decided I wanted to design something that, rather than actually print it. The first design work that I ever did was R2D2's dome. And the reason I did it is because it was half a ball, so it was a ball cut in half. I thought, this is really easy. So I cut this ball in half, designed the dome, and I was sharing it on Thingiverse at the time. I didn't know any of this existed, any of all of you lot existed. I was just pleasantly making my own R2D2 in the background. And then just got this avalanche of R2D2 builders reaching out to me because the dome was the hardest thing to fabricate. The rest of the things you could make out of wood or plastic or whatever. And I jumped on the Facebook group, started to talk to some lovely people. There was a guy called Lee Towersey and Oliver Steeples who were chatting with. And then when I looked on their profiles, like you do, just to see, I was like, oh my God, these are the ones that made the one for The Force Awakens. Because, you know, as I was in starstruck for Lee and Oliver, that they were actually talking to me. And yeah, and then as soon as the dome had started to get more popular, I was immediately inundated by people telling me how inaccurate it was and all the changes that needed changing, which I know is part of this group as well. And then really things have grown from there. I really started in earnest to print R2D2 when an American guy told me you couldn't 3D print a full R2D2 because it wouldn't cope with all of the stresses, and then he proceeded to jump on his and ride it around. So that's what really drove me to do the whole thing. But interestingly, over that time, I've just, we've got some brilliant friends. Lee and Oliver definitely within those, and also all of the UK builders and all of the guys in this room. So it's been quite a roller coaster and a journey, really. And you often sit back and think, how the hell did I end up in a conference room in the middle of Indianapolis, looking at a bunch of lunatics?
So I started my first build in 2002, and it was mostly handmade wood frame, styrene skins. For those that are old enough, remember the old D&D dome, which was a hemisphere dome. And that's what I built. Took about 3 years, finished it in 2005. Started doing appearance work right off the bat. Mary Franklin and I were good friends by that point. She worked for Lucasfilm in their fan relations. She handled all the conventions and appearance work. So I started doing appearance work for their licensees, Pepsi Bottling Company, just going to Walmarts and things, appearing with R2D2. Fast forward to 2013, Dave Filoni had this new animated series that was going to come out, and he wanted he had a droid character, and he wanted someone to take a look at it. He wanted to build one. He said before the R2 builders got wind of it and made 100 of them, which look in the hallway today, he would love that. But yeah, so I built Chopper, and the Disney purchase had happened. So then they approached me about building droids for the theme parks. So then I wound up doing that for a few years, built droids for Orlando, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Japan, cruise ship, and then that led to other things. And then more recently, Dave Filoni kind of pulled me back, said, "Hey, you want to build droids for the TV shows?" I'm like, "Sure." So wound up building for The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, couple pieces for Ahsoka, and at this point, I'm working on my 48th robot.
My story is a little bit less exciting than these guys. I started in actually the Dalek building community back in 2004, and since then I've built 14 Dalek props over the years. During that process, during that period, I joined the TV and film industry. I'm actually an assistant director, and I've worked on many a drama. I'm based in Scotland, one of them being Outlander, which you might have heard of over here. I'd always wanted to build a droid. I'd done the Daleks, and I started building the second Dalek in the kitchen of the flat that we were living in, the apartment. And my partner went mental, and she was like, "Oh, you can't build that in the kitchen." I was like, "All right, let's buy a house." So we bought a house and filled the house up with droids. So, and now because of Michael, I started building R2-D2 during COVID. Avoided going on camera for Drinks and Droids for about 3 weeks because nobody wants to see this face. And eventually ended up making some of the best friends around the world doing stuff that we love. So since then, I've been very lucky that during Andor season 2, am I allowed to say this, Lee, that you invited me down?
Yeah, you're good.
I've already said it anyway. During Andor season 2, I was lucky enough to work on episode 12, which was fun. And since then, I've been back and forth to Pinewood doing the odd bits here and there. It's very exciting. And just feel very lucky to be where I am right now and hanging out with all you awesome people. So that's my story. It's not very exciting. Oh, and one of the Daleks, I was also very lucky that when David Tennant came back for the new series, the new stuff, they needed a Dalek for that, and that's one of my Daleks. So that's quite cool as well. So if you watch the behind, sorry, I'm just going on a bit of a tangent here because I'm really annoyed about it. Is this still being streamed? I better not say it then. Okay, I'll say it after we've cut off. But he said that he signed my Dalek and he didn't, and I was furious. Anyway, that's another story. That's another story. See, I was so angry I couldn't even wait until we cut the cameras. I'm just like, yeah, just get out of the system. Anyway, that's my little story. Anyway, what do you want to talk about?
You know, I've got a question for Lee, coming from the fan community and then doing film and television. What's been the most challenging aspect of that?
The most challenging aspect of droid building in general, or working in film?
Just working in film and television, what's been the most challenging part of that for you?
Deadlines. It's horrendous. You know, we'll do these hobbies, and we don't really have many deadlines as a hobbyist. So we can take as long as we like and make them as nice as we like. But when you've got deadlines, Michael, as you well know, it's you know how long it's going to take you. You know you're going to reach that deadline, but I always seem to finish the night before.
Right. Always.
And it's just making it as good as you can. And yeah, it's the deadlines for me, Michael. I've got to say that's the toughest thing for me.
Has there ever been a moment when you've rolled a prop on the set and then it just literally falls apart as you step? It's fine up until that point, then you roll it onto set and it just the panels fall off or whatever.
I don't think there is. No. There has been times where I've known that I've got a lot of days shooting on a droid, so I'll get it to a certain state where I know it's good enough, but then I know it'll be back in the workshop and I'll have a bit of time to do some finer detailing on it. So I do sort of play a bit of a game with myself sometimes. Unless you've got a story that I've forgotten that you remember, though.
No comment. I can't talk about it yet, but maybe in the future.
Okay, yeah, after hours, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
But there is the time that you brought your ALT to DB UK and you were racing it around the track.
I can't hear you, mate. Sorry.
When you brought your ALT droid to DB UK and you were trying to get it around the racetrack.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking film, but yeah, there was a time where I face planted my own droid, trying to race it around a track, which was ridiculous. And you've got a good photo to show it.
We've got a whole video, so if we can find it, we'll show you later. But so we have in the UK at DB UK, we have a time track where you have to go around this obstacle course, hit some buttons with your droid, which is fine with an R2 because you can just touch it with the front foot. But the ALT droid, if you've ever seen one, they are wide. They are really wide. And you were trying to hit a button with the track, and you mounted the metal pole. Am I right in thinking, was that the screen-used ALT droid?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. That's a shame. That would have been more exciting. But he mounted the pole, and it just completely flipped it. And those of you who know Sam Prentice, you may have seen him. He likes to promote his 3D printing stuff. You've never seen him run so fast with such a smug look on his face, cheering that Lee had smashed this droid onto the floor. So,
because Sam Prentice had already face planted it as well. That was the other reason.
Karma's a beautiful thing.
Right, I've got a question for you, Michael.
Oh no.
Okay. What's the weirdest or most unexpected request you've had? In the world of droid building, I suppose. Don't feel free to elaborate.
This could be a whole panel unto itself. I don't know. I've had a lot of people that want me to build things for them, and we've had some things that I get a lot of requests basically to build Disney or Lucasfilm property, and I have to explain to them that I work for Disney and Lucasfilm, so I'm not allowed to replicate that because they own the characters. And so that's probably the most common thing. I get people all the time saying, can you build an R2-D2, or can you build this or that, or can you make a replica of Doug? And no, I can't do that.
Nobody wants that.
Well,
No.
What about the black hole?
Oh, the black hole.
They pay you to do that?
yeah, so that one, I was able to navigate that very carefully. Yeah, they wanted me to build Maximilian from the movie Black Hole, as well as Old Bob for a pizza place in Texas. And I did speak with the folks at Disney, and they really just didn't care. They said essentially I could make one-offs of them. They didn't want me to, if I was going to make, a dozen of them and sell them, in a store or something, that was prohibited. But they said a one-time artistic interpretation they allowed. So, yeah. What are you, a lawyer? This is being recorded. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yep.
For the three of you, what's been the most challenging part of the design process for going from concept to actually creating the physical thing? Who wants to start?
The most challenging?
The most challenging prop or character design that you've done that has been the most challenging from conception to creation?
I would say probably Sinar droid, which is the droid in the opening sequence of Andor Season 2. I only had a small part in that, the black droid, before they steal the TIE fighter. There's so much going on. You see most of the functions that it's got, but it's got so many lights, lots of rotation going on. It's really heavy. It's quite low profile, so thankfully the floor was quite forgiving, and we were okay with the floor. I only did the drive system for that, in all honesty. But watch it. Oh, and the fingers as well. So it's like triangulated, and it's got these fingers that move as well. I don't know if you see it very clearly in the opening sequence. But yeah, I would say that was the most. We had all sorts going on. We had linear actuators, pops, hub motors. We had Arduino boards going on. We had LED boards. There was just so much that could have gone wrong. Thankfully, it didn't. And they were all using their own power supply as well, because I don't like to use step downs on batteries. I don't like to have drive batteries supplying pretty power feeds for everything else. But then when you've got LED batteries, drive batteries, rotation batteries, Arduino batteries, there's a whole load of things going on. So that was probably the most challenging build.
Yeah, mine far and away was the R5 we did for Mandalorian. Dave and John Favreau wanted 232 droid, and they called and said, "Can you do it?" And I said, "Maybe." And so I started doing a little research, and there was one in Australia that was styrene that really moved quickly, beautifully, but structurally there were issues. And then I thought, light bulb comes on. I said, "Hey, I just saw it R2LA. Where are you, Kevin?" There's Kevin. So Kevin, he had not only a 232 droid that worked, you could repeat it, drive around with it, but he was also offering parts. And so I immediately called him and said, "Hey, could we get these in a very short period of time?" And he said, "Sure, whatever you need." Maybe. Yeah. And so I got back with production. I said, "Well, we think we can make it." And they said, "Well, go ahead and do it." And so I think a little later we've got some videos and things we can show when we were testing it. But, it's a real dance. And the one we built was not computer controlled. The new version that you have is very sophisticated. This one was all cascading limit switches, and getting the timing and positioning perfectly aligned on a 200+ pound robot was much more of a challenge. And there was some programming involved, and we were using some of your code and then some custom code. Chris Lee came in literally at the 11th hour. We had a week to go and it still wasn't working. And Chris came in and saved the day and made a few changes. And we figured out some of the hardware issues. And literally we finished it, got it working, and the union guy came and picked it up. It was that close. So thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, mine was probably BD1 when the game first came out, and the main thing is that the size of the head on that. I mean, most of the Star Wars droids have got big heads and tiny necks or long, thin arms, but BD1 was just, there was a crazily no space inside to get the head lift, and I wanted to get so much animation that's in there, so we ended up doing all sorts of weird reverse belts and things to try and get the head to lift and all the movements in there and get all the servos in such a kind of small space. I think that was what we used for Wally, wasn't it? I used the inspiration of that for one of the Wally necks on lift off the back of that. So yeah, that was it. And of course I got the question then, can you make it walk? I was like, don't be stupid, you'll never see one of these walking. And then that ties on to the next one, which is BDXs. I mean, the work that people are doing on there. I met a guy in Japan, he's from China, who's got the furthest on the thing waddling along, and he's got a team of 100 builders in in China that were working together on programming and creating this thing. So it's really interesting. It's like the Roger whatever, he was the guy that wrote 4 Minute Mile. Once you've done 4 Minute Mile and you've proved it's possible, everybody else will do it. So the moment the BDXs came out, everybody's like, we can do this and we can program it. That's quite a complicated little thing. That cool.
I've got a follow-up question for Michael actually. When we're building stuff and designing stuff in the workshop, we always talk about the building community, like especially when we did Big 2 Emo. Like how long do you think it will take them to crack it and start making them and so on? And a question for Michael: which is the least popular thing that you feel you may have wasted your time on, Michael? What file are people not downloading anymore? Because there's droids that we did use that we probably knew they weren't going to be big, or they're not as big as we hoped they would be. But you would know statistically from downloads, not that you necessarily have got them to hand, which is the least popular one.
It's a brilliant, really hard question actually, that one. From the movies, it's quite interesting because the moment anything comes out, there's a big hype curve, and immediately the speed at which people create building groups off the back of it, and it kind of reaches and then it just disappears. I think they've all the ones that I've seen that have come out have been popular. The ones that I've probably seen the quickest drop off, and it isn't one that I don't design. Pip was a real pike, a peep.
Yeah.
The small ones, a big peep, and then drop off quite quickly. And then the what's it called? Leela? What's it?
Lola.
Brain's gone. Yeah, Lola's the one that's kind of again peaked up and dropped down. And I was chatting to Dave Moog about it from Droid Division, because he was the same. See, anything comes out, he just gets these. When you're building this, and these things can take 9-10 months to do all of the CAD work and design. And by the end of that time, you kind of peak and go down. The one that's I found unexpectedly maintained its popularity and grown in popularity is B2EMO. I say that because I only saw it. We started building it when it rolled out on the credits, so we had no idea what the character was. We had no idea how involved it was in the movie. And obviously, it's a nightmare of a complex thing to build. So thank you, Lee, and the team for that. Appreciate it. And so I do something practical, but actually, that's gone from strength to strength because of the nature of the character, and also kind of the emotion that droid's captured in there. I think has been second to none on most of it. So that's one's grown from strength to strength.
I got a question for Lee. Lee, what is your favorite droid to operate?
B2EMO, without a doubt. Because of the functions. It's R2. I always remember JJ coming up to me and having a joke about R2D2, because he's like, let's emote with R2D2. What can he do? And let's face it, in three-legged mode, he just turns his head. That's about it. Yeah. But with B2EMO, you've got the extend. You've got a lovely tilt in the head. And the drive system, the mechanism drive system, if nobody's had a go at the mechanism drive system, try and persuade a B2EMO owner to have a go of their droid, because it's fantastic. It really is a fun thing to drive as well. So it's, definitely B2EMO. And huge credit to Josh, Lee and Matt Denton for that, because that was purely their build. Right. And such a tough build. That's the only droid we ever had only one of. All the other production droids we've made, we have multiples of, for the hero droids certainly anyway. But B2EMO, we only ever had one. So whenever you see it at events and so on that we're working on, it is the only one we have. So it's phenomenal. It's wonderful.
What was the build time for B2? How long do they have to?
Good question. It was probably about a year, because it was during COVID. So Josh was CADing it at home while we weren't allowed to work. We weren't allowed to go into Pinewood. So I think really COVID didn't come at a good time for anyone, but if anything, work-wise, it came at a good time for Josh, because that gave him a nice build time.
Has anybody got any questions? Actually, there you go.
My question is, you'd mentioned you think about the builders when you make when you choose a droid, and like how long it'll take to make one. What about the flip side? Has there been an instance that you can talk about, or just in vague terms about a design that somebody had dreamed up, and it's like, well, if we want to make this physical at any point, like what are some shifts that we might need to make? Oh gosh.
So I just missed the end of that. So is it really spotting a droid builder's built and thinking that's cool, we want to do one like that? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Or if somebody in the creative team is like, hey, this is my vision, we can do this in CG, but somebody's going to want to make this physical at some point. So are there any back and forth about design considerations to eventually make it physical if it was never maybe intended to be a background thing, but hey, we want to throw a bone to the builders.
As a creatures department, it's always our job to make practical. So we never consider CG. If it looks impossible, then of course we will sort of discuss it and decide what we're going to do. And sometimes we'll agree that a CG element will be brought into the droid. L3, for example, in Solo, that was more of a costume anyway. That didn't come through us in the end, but there had to be some CG elements to that. But as far as building a droid is, as hard as it is, and as it looks like it should be CG, Neil Stanley will always put to make it practical, which can be a nightmare. BB-8, for example, the red carpet BB-8, that came after we shot the Force Awakens, but it was still a scene that had been filmed, so we just had to do it.
So we're about halfway in. and we did say that about halfway through we were going to turn the cameras off and maybe show you some stuff a bit more spicy. Take from that what you will. Say goodbye to everybody online.
everybody.
Sorry, guys.